to change that language, and that was therefore left to the leaders. And the leaders also thrashed it out and arrived at a consensus, and which is why the communique comes as a declaration in the Delhi Declaration, and our tracks of the ministers had to stop short of it.
And it is rather interesting that just about every country seemed to see this document as their own success. UK is of the same view, so is United States, even the Russians. They are saying that this is a piece of document which is historic. What makes it so, is it craftsmanship at work here?
Yes, craftsmanship, and also the maturity with which Indian negotiating teams handled it at every stage, whether it was the finance track or the other ministerial track. Issues were discussed back and forth, and a language which is acceptable to everybody was arrived at. And that is why this document reflects everybody's shared thoughts and India's own input, together with India's desire to have the voice of the South also get infused. So we managed, because of the negotiating team. I, for one, will really take this opportunity to say how the finance team, Ministry of Finance's team, worked intensively. And I'm so happy to say that the team is largely of women. They did brilliant work. And they would come back saying, oh my God, we've not arrived at something tonight. We'll try early tomorrow morning. But they were never exhausted. Physical exhaustion maybe, but mentally they were very stimulated. And because they went back with fresh thoughts, no one could say, no, come on, no, we won't cooperate. But over and above all this, our skills in negotiation, our skills in drafting up a good language, all that is important. But I will definitely say that there was a kind of a spirit of cooperation where countries thought this is the time when an institution like G20 should spread hope. And it cannot be as if, there's something which is holding back somebody and the whole thing collapses. So that spirit of wanting to come up with something was so apparently felt by all. And I'm glad that that is the spirit with which we worked and resulted in a declaration giving hope that multilateralism can deliver.
And this is also about unlocking potential at multiple levels. Right. You spoke about your team. That's also unlocking of the potential of women who felt perhaps being guided by you that they can deliver. This is also unlocking of potential of trade and supporting the MSMEs. You have often spoken about it. The government is on that track. Is there some kind of special push that you're looking at, particularly leading to using aggregators, account aggregators in particular?
Yes, of course. The digital technology has come as a very big tool to facilitate and enable MSMEs. Now, you took the name of account aggregators who are now enabling the process between the banks and the beneficiaries, who are the MSMEs, to be able to share data with explicit permission given. Nobody is going to usurp anybody's data. With sharing of data, decisions which are being taken by banks are expedited. So they don't have to run from pillar to post. They can be the customer of one bank, but yet when they see credit is available in some other bank in favorable terms, they can obviously through the account aggregator deal with that bank as well, a different bank from their regular bank in which they have their account, and so on. Now, again, I'll go back to referring to the digital public infrastructure in having created something like ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. It is something which is unique that we have created, and that is going to help even the smallest of small craftsmen, let's say, sitting in Aligarh or Muradabad or somewhere in Tumkur or somewhere else, creating their own generations learned and acquired skills. They can now get onto ONDC and get the entire world market to see what products they have. That is not possible for a small handicrafts person or a merchant or a trader to access the global market without having to go through, let's say, a private player, which is what is the feature elsewhere, whereas India's given that access. So when you talk about trade or MSME, these are institutions which are going to benefit immensely because of the digitization, formalization of Indian economy.
एंड मैम मल्टीलैटरल डेवलपमेंट बैंक जिसकी चर्चा आपने अभी की, उस पर एम्फोसिस इसलिए भी है क्योंकि अफ्रीकन यूनियन अब पार्ट हो गया है. Financial inclusion, Prime Minister Modi has emphasized saying that future cannot be about GDPs but human development. That is the new index forward.
Absolutely. And I think it's because of that that many countries, when they saw the scaled up achievement of India, having to cover its entire population with a bank account, having to make sure that DBT is possible for them, which came off handy during the lockdown, during which time many developed countries were still writing out checks and posting it through regular mails, whereas India, with a click of the button, could deliver. So, deliver into the accounts of each and every individual who needed that help. Now, the India stack, therefore, is being looked at with great interest even by countries from, say, African Union. So we actually, Prime Minister made it very clear that we are open to people who want us to help them in setting up these digital networks, because it's going to help in bringing financial inclusion and spreading the benefits of economic development to common people.
Is there a possibility of a uniform policy for digital access and currency post G20 and the agreements that you have reached?
The agreements that we've reached are for sharing information on how to spread digital assets that we have, so that in case countries want them, they can use it, and also to make sure that countries understand the rules and regulations with which we've done it through the public fora. So these are things which countries will have to understand, and they've taken initial interest. They've also expressed a keenness to know more. They've seen as a pilot some states where the implementation has happened. So there is immense scope for India to expand on this.
इंटरनेशनलाइजेशन ऑफ डॉलर की चर्चा हो रही है. किन देशों ने इंटरेस्ट दिखाया है भारत के रुपया में?
About 22 countries are negotiating and approaching us to see if bilateral trade can be held in rupee. Also, because many of those countries are running short of dollar reserves, but yet their basic trade cannot be stopped. So they see Indian rupee as a stable currency. India as a country which understands development needs, and also because Prime Minister has been in touch with all these leadership for bringing them on board for development goals, for achieving their development goals. So they find it easy to talk to us about having rupee trade.
And ma'am, you know, G20 got praise from unexpected quarters. Is there somewhere that you realize that has things changed so drastically? Some compliment that G20 got, which made you think that this was not possible till the time you actually achieved it?
We've been hearing, at least from my counterparts, I've been hearing word of appreciation for two things, which actually reflect on everything that we've done till now. For the content of the meeting. Every meeting had rich content, not just because we brought in contemporary issues and critical issues on the list of agenda, but also brought in rich working papers to go along with it. And therefore people thought, yes, it's not just there in the list. They're providing us with a lot more researched papers with which we can discuss. So content was appreciated. The process was appreciated as well. And what do they mean by process? That it was spread across India. Every state had a role to play. India took this as an opportunity to display the cultural and also the economic wealth, in the sense of small craftsmen. The soft power of India was displayed and shared with all the guests who came. The warm hospitality that we had extended. In fact, one of the ministers told me that in his team, there are people who have, at least in this G20 India presidency, seen 10 destinations in India. So that is an opportunity we used to showcase India as a destination to be seen, to bring our craftsmen on board to show that they know they can showcase their crafts. We extended our hospitality, the cuisine. People were really fascinated, both the variety in food. So this is one opportunity. I think Prime Minister was clear from the beginning that he needs Indian people to participate in this. So unless it is held in all states, that effect will not be achieved. So that's what we.
So New Delhi-centric diplomacy is no longer there. It is beyond that. Will we be seeing more infrastructure push post G20?
Infrastructure has always been the top key instrument through which we want economic development to be achieved, because the benefits are immediate as well as long term. It pays to create assets for the country. And after all, if I say this, I'm sure the opposition will get very agitated. But you recognized that the World Bank's report itself said it. The push with which Prime Minister Modi ensured that infrastructure projects are not just laid foundation for, but within his term, we are also inaugurating them, meaning we are planning for something, we are bringing it to the ground, executing it, and making sure it is available for common people. So what couldn't be achieved? They all may have attempted to bring some more, assets for India, public assets for India. But the speed with which we've executed it has made a very big transformational change for India. Now, every delegate commented on what we saw a few years ago is not what India is today. It is so changed, and amazing infrastructure is visible for everybody, and they're using it as well.
Since you spoke about your political opponents, they are talking about inflation, unemployment, and also one figure which is of concern of decrease in overall female participation in labor force.
I'm glad that they want to talk about all this. And if they do talk, I'm fully willing to engage with them. And I'm sure everybody in this ministry, in the government, will answer them squarely with facts in our hands. Female labor participation is not just a problem for India. We need to have more and more women coming. That is where when you saw Chandrayaan and the team which is guiding Chandrayaan, being fully of women is an inspiration for very many Indian women who think that now they can reach the higher levels of responsibilities within the organization in which they would want to work. That is becoming a force of change. We are also helping people to get skilled. So with data, I can certainly answer the opposition about how inflation is being controlled, how labor participation is being ensured, particularly of women, and the announcement of the government, which every month we are going about filling positions in the government, the central government. 10 lakh jobs have been announced, and about more than 3/4 of it is already letters of job have been given to people. So actually, it is these issues on which they should talk, whereas they do not want to talk on it, except for keeping questions thrown at public. And when we stand up to answer in Parliament to answer these questions, they either walk away or they are never in the house.
And one issue which has taken center stage is Sanatana Dharma controversy. Those who have tracked Dravidian politics aren't really amused by what has been said by DMK's Udanidhi Stalin, but those who are not are reacting differently. Now, the Prime Minister has spoken about it. Do you see this as an important issue going ahead? क्योंकि एक चीज बहुत क्लियर है मैम, सब लोग अपनी अपनी ऑडियंस को एड्रेस कर रहे हैं.
Marya, if I may bring in an element of personalizing it, I have lived experience of what DMK is talking about now. The anti-Hindu, anti-Sanatan, anti-caste, particular caste, is a pronounced policy of the DMK. And they execute it without fail, relentlessly. I have lived experience, and therefore I speak with confidence. Today, what the minister who has sworn by the Constitution has spoken is a complete non-compliance. He has deliberately, if I may use that word, cared nothing for the Constitution on which he's taken an oath. He has very clearly spoken, knowing that he is violating the oath that he's taken. To aggravate this, there was the minister who deals with Hindu religious charitable endowments, which is a ministry. The minister who heads that was seated on the dais even as this minister violates the Constitution and speaks against, provocatively, to eradicate, to remove, to destroy one faith. This time it is Sanatana Dharma, which he openly speaks. And the minister who is supposed to guard Hindu religious and charitable endowments is seated on the dais. He doesn't blink an eyelid. So tells you that DMK, which has been practicing this for almost 70 years now, coming out of that Justice Party, coming out of Dravida Kazhagam, their ideologues, they've been practicing all this all the while. And now a minister who's sworn by the Constitution has openly said, I'm here. And in fact, he went to the extent of saying, it's not a meeting for protesting against. I'm glad it is not a meeting for protesting against Sanatana Dharma, but it is a meeting for eradicating. He says that on the dais.
It was a sweeping statement.
What is sweeping about it? He pronounces it. And that minister who's supposed to be the minister to take care of Hindu religious and charitable endowments is seated on the dais. Can there be a greater insult and a greater mockery than this? And there's not one voice from anybody condemning it, who are all part of this Indi alliance. On the contrary, you have Congress minister, Congress party president. You have other members of the Indi alliance also saying this in very many different words. So, no one will be wrong to infer and to conclude that this Indi alliance is against Sanatana Dharma, Indi alliance is against Hindus, and their stated goal is to work against the Hindus. And this is that Indi alliance, which a minister in Tamil Nadu has openly spoken and later to be endorsed in different words by members of that alliance.
But ma'am, do you see this as dominating political discourse going up to 2020?
I would think. I would think it should. Marya, but let me ask you this. In this country, where people shed crocodile tears, talking about secularism, and when BJP speaks about that appeasement policy in the name of secularism, it used to be to please one religion and not care about the other. Now, continuing with that appeasement, it's also to make sure the other one is eradicated. Do you think this is secularism that they want? Appeasement itself is wrong. That is why you find Prime Minister Modi's policies saying everybody who should get it, whether it is Ujjwala, whether it is PM Awas Yojana, whether it is electricity or Nal Se Jal. We don't discriminate. Whereas you see that even in Karnataka, even today, it is appeasement which is dominating. So, what is the definition of secularism? You want all of us to prosper, get whoever deserves, whoever is in that category to get some benefit to get? Or is this secularism? And their mind, secularism is this.
But ma'am, DMK has always spoken about it in that way. My question is, do you think they are facing the heat only because they are now part of the India alliance or India?
they are now facing it because earlier they used to do it sleazily, slimily. The people in Tamil Nadu would suffer, but the rest of the country wouldn't because of the language problem. The rest of the country didn't see what was happening in Tamil Nadu. If in J&K in the 90s you had the Kashmiri Pandits thrown out of the state, and that is not for the first time, it had happened generations before, and so on. In Tamil Nadu, this is happening over the decades. Since the British time, when the classification of castes were made rigid. The rest of the country didn't understand what was going on there because it was largely in Tamil, and that too, I'm sorry to say this, in foul, obscene language. It had always been that. But now when the minister has spoken, and today is the era of social media, it gets quickly Google translated. You don't even need to wait for a translator to tell you what he spoke. People are realizing, what's going on? But that's been going on for 70 years. So, I'm sorry, it's not because DMK is part of the India alliance that it's come out. It's because social media has picked it up and put it out. And I'm not naming the minister. These are people who are talking about samatvam, in the sense equal, social equality for everybody. One of the ministers himself thrashed his daughter, and in the social media, you will see her crying only because she married intercaste. So the hypocrisy of the DMK politics, which the Congress, because it's nowhere in Tamil Nadu, supports blindly and mouths many of the ideologically driven language of DMK, which may not be consistent with the Congress's stated ideology. But the one worrying factor is they're all part of Break India group. Separatist language there, separatist ideology there. Congress today stands with all the fringe groups which want to break India. There is a link. Let's not miss on that.
I have two more political questions for you. First, about Karnataka freebie, which is seen as one of the reasons why you did not win the elections recently, and it's some model that you would want to repeat in the upcoming assembly elections. Is that a matter of concern? Second, the caste census. It's almost being seen as Mandal 2.0.
On the freebies, I think I've stated repeatedly, of course, in boring language, in the sense, not a language which will be catchy for people, but the language which conveys the true factual position in it. If your state's budget and finances are such that you would want to give something for a section and you will be able to financially support it through your budget, a budget which gets passed in the assembly, a budget whose expenditure statements are clear and outcomes are clear, and gets approved in the House, give it. I won't call that a freebie. But if you're bringing in such doles to win election, which your state can't support because it's financials or whatever it is, that is being, if I may use the word, irresponsible, burdening the next several generations and leading the state to be in such a dire strait. That's not justified.
What the opposition says is that you believe in welfareism and you use the same thing and you call that as freebie for opposition. आपके लिए वो welfareism है, उनके लिए वो freebie हो जाता है.
Well, they can always twist and turn anything. Now, having given the promise for a freebie and having seen what actually it is going to mean once you've taken the oath and come into office, then to say, I don't have enough money, I want the government of India to give me money. Where was this thought then when you were giving the promise? Doesn't that add up to what I'm telling? If your state's financial situation is comfortable, go giving it. But you give it, win the election, and then on coming, you say, oh, Modi, please give me that money. I have to fulfill my guarantees. What a blatant abuse of the promises that you give, misleading the public.
Caste census?
Well, that is being discussed. At
Is
least
the BJP worried?
Well, caste census, I'm not going to comment, only because different states are projecting it differently. Let's see how it goes.
Last question, and I'm going to go back to G20. As someone who was involved in negotiations 1 week after the fine print, what are your thoughts?
I think I'll completely credit the Honorable Prime Minister for having a complete picture earlier, much before we started, on how this whole thing has to be handled so that India's stature and India's, what it is actually worth, India's image is perceived by everybody. And more importantly, Indian people should feel that there's something happening for this country. We are all participants in it, rather than keep it a Delhi-centric exercise where only a few ministers are involved and the common people don't even know how this is going to benefit them. Now the people know these are opportunities for them to showcase their talent, showcase what they have in their state, showcase all that hospitality, Aditi Devo Bhava, means. And that thought, that vision of the Prime Minister has actually played out, benefiting all of us.
So in one word, what will it be? According to you, the New Delhi Declaration, the final outcome.
The New Delhi Declaration actually sets India in a different platform altogether, that we've proven that we can be a force of bringing people together, even on very divisive issues, be able to have them come on the same page, and above all, be a document of hope. This world at this stage requires that.
Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Nirmala Sitharaman, always a pleasure to speak to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Marya. Thank you very much.
That's all for me. Thank you so much for watching.